I'm Dean Cipolla, and this is the Azure Academy. So continuing with our migration series, talking about how do we get stuff into Azure, I want to talk today about custom images. A custom image is where you have some kind of configuration into a operating system. Perhaps there are patches and updates, there may be software, there could be things like security configurations, things that make it unique to how you run images in your business. That image is something that could be uploaded to Azure. So if you use today Windows 10 and Server 2016 or 2019, those are three different images because they're three different operating systems. And then again, if you use Ubuntu and you have different flavors of that, and then SUSE or Red Hat or any other version of Linux, CentOS and all those are all different images, and every different version of the image that you maintain is another image in your environment. So if you're doing this kind of thing already, you're very well aware of all of this. When you go to Azure, you can bring your custom image with you. Now, if you choose to do this, then we have to get a system on-prem prepared to move to Azure, get your image updated, prepped, ready, uploaded to Azure, and then be able to use it to build systems from so that they match the same kind of security profile that you have on premise. How do we do this? Why do we do this? And additionally, there's one other discussion that I think we need to have, and that's should we do this? Now, you may be doing this today on-prem, and I'm going to encourage you as you move to the cloud to think differently. Now, this is a very old document that I had from managing image deployment processes. And basically, this is just a workflow of somebody's going to put in a request, and that request is going to be approved. And then if it's approved, move on to the workflow, and then go through, build things, do things, etc. And then you get to the part where things actually happen, and you deploy a new VM, and that's going to come from your custom image. And then you're going to do XYZ to that image, build maybe some data disks, install some applications, some agents, run some scripts, do some things, join it to certain OUs or groups in the join it to AD groups, give it all the right permissions that it needs, set up the local admin accounts, etc., and then tell people, okay, your box is built, you're ready to go. Now that's the high level of deploying a VM image. That process, generally speaking, may not change as you move to the cloud, but the way you perform this process should change to more of a DevOps and cloud mindset. Now, this diagram, and I'll pull out a little bit here so you can see it, this one on the bottom is how we were building custom images, and so the workflows that would happen in order to build those custom images. So let's zoom in here. So it would all start off with initializing a system installation. So you get your installation media, and you first remove unnecessary software if there is any. So if you started off with, I got a brand new laptop and or a brand new server image from HP, Dell, whoever. Now we've got this box that has shown up on our doorstep. Now we have to make this box fit in our world. So then you would first remove any of the extra stuff that's there that you don't need. After that, you apply your security configuration baseline. You add any roles to it that you have to, disable services that you don't need, install software that you need, do baselining, and then, etc. You work through the process. Apply patches, apply drivers, vulnerability assessments, checks and policies, and then is everything cool? Yes. If not, repeat until you get it right. Document everything that you've done, package the whole thing up, capture it as an image. Now you're ready to deploy across that same kind of equipment in the future. This process, as you can see, is long and involved. And if you build all of this into what would be called a thick image. Now let's say you need to change these components because now we're using a different security tool. Now what that means is every one of those images that you have, Server 2008, Server 2012, 2016, 2019, Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10, SUSE, Red Hat, Ubuntu, CentOS, everything else, and plus all of the different service packed versions of all those images that you have, which takes up gigabytes, if not terabytes of storage, all have to be updated, which means someone's got to spend time doing this. Someone's got to take space to do this, and then in the end, now you're back to the same basic thick image. Oh no, now patches have come out. Okay, somebody's got to update the images again. We'll deploy the image again on a system, then once it's deployed on a system, update all the patches, then capture it again, and then go through the certification process again. This is a pain. I highly suggest that if you must do a custom image, that you move to a imaging process. And the imaging process could be somewhat like our workflow here, but relate it to an image. Yes, all these pieces may have to be done, but they should be done at deployment time through automation and scripting. That way, if you have to pull out a particular stack, change security tools, add new monitoring agents, add updated patches, these things happen as part of a workflow. So you don't maintain a thick, static image that if any piece of that image changes, now we've got to repackage the whole thing and recertify it for use. You move to an imaging process, and that process then dictates that little piece changed here, no big deal. The next time the workflow runs to build a machine, this will get the new piece. By moving to that process, you don't maintain images. You have the vanilla install, or in the case of Azure, the marketplace image. And that marketplace image is kept up to date with patches already for you. So the only thing you have to do is run your scripts, customization, security stack, agents, after the image itself, the base image of Windows or Linux, is deployed. This makes the process faster, smoother, easier to update, and more maintainable over time. So enough of that. I'll get off my soapbox and let's look at the documentation. So we go under Products and to Windows or Linux VMs. Either way, you'd find it in the same exact place. From here, we go to How-To Guides, Use Images, and then we go to Prepare a VM for Upload. And this is if you need to know how to prep your systems for upload to Azure. There's this doc, and then there's the Capture Image, Generalize Image. Those are the big ones that you need to know about, along with one other thing that is critical, and that is under Manage VMs, there is the Azure VM Agent. Now, the VM Agent is what allows Azure to talk to and control the machine that you're deploying. So if you use something like auto shutdown, or you're going to deploy other agents or services, you would need the Azure VM agent to be installed on the system. System's not going to boot properly in Azure without it. Make sure that you download this. So you come into the documentation here, download the MSI for Windows systems, and then you can run the install quiet or just walk through it next, and you're done. So we'll be doing that. Now, again, coming back to uploading to Azure. Windows systems or Linux systems, anything that's moving to Azure today supports VHD files. Okay, vhdx is coming sometime soon, but today, VHD files. Now, important about that VHD file, it must be configured to be a fixed size. Normally, if you're using things in VMware as VMDKs or Hyper-V as vhdx, you're using dynamically expanding. That way they take up less space. But for moving to Azure, we need the disk to be a fixed size. I'll show you how to convert your images in Hyper-V, and then when we get to VMware stuff, we'll talk about that as well. Basically, there's a tool that you can download called the VM Converter that'll do it for you, and we'll get into that. So you can do that through PowerShell or through the Hyper-V Management Console, which we'll look at. And here's the stuff on how to do it for VMDKs. And then once it's done, this is the meat of this page. There's a bunch of things that you have to set in order to be able to prep your VM to move to the cloud successfully. Now, all of this stuff that's here, I have captured for you in a PowerShell script, which I'll have uploaded onto my GitHub repo. And you can just download and run this script. and it's a exact copy of everything that's here. So we'll walk through this very quickly. I don't want to spend a lot of time here. But basically, if you're in an environment where you use a proxy, we need to reset that so that you're not using a proxy. If you need to continue with a proxy moving forward into Azure, you have a proxy set up in Azure you need to use. You also need to specify this IP address for your proxy. And that's because this is the Azure DHCP address. This is where you're going to get your IP and be able to get on the network. So we need this. Also, make sure all disks that are on the system are online. And then after that, that your time zones are set up correctly and that your power profile is set to high performance. And then we're going to set our temp directories. After that, make sure that our services that we need are set in a way that that Azure needs them to be set, and that remote desktop, which has a bunch of settings here, is configured properly. And those are all registry keys, and you can see what some of these changes will do. After that, we want to configure our firewall rules so that traffic in Azure is allowed to function as expected. And then after that, making sure that your VM is healthy by checking your boot manager config and checking your system disk. Once that is done, then we're going to set up some things here for doing system dumps in case anything goes wrong. Verify that your Win management, this is your PowerShell remoting features, are enabled and that they're healthy. And then you can check your net stats to make sure that you see port 3389 if this is a Windows system, and of course netstat on Linux if you're doing SSH. Okay, so once all of this happy stuff is done, and you go through this documentation and verify that you have all these patches and that you're up to date basically with your image. Once all that's done, then we're going to use a tool called Sysprep. Now, if you've been doing images on-prem, then you should be already familiar with Sysprep. And basically, this is going to remove all the unique GUIDs and markers from the system and put it back to a out-of-box experience. And you will generalize that image so it'll be like you just opened it up from the factory. And then we're going to shut the VM down. Once we shut the VM down, now we're going to take the image, copy it, convert it, get it ready, upload it, and off we go. All right? So that's where we're going to be ending with our tour of the documentation. Let's actually do this thing. So I've got a Hyper-V server, and I've done some of these steps already because some of them take a little bit of time. So we have our VM here, and I've already run our script to do all of that work, and that was run inside the VM. And then what I did was I took this file here, and let's go take a look at where that is. So Hyper-V, image, virtual hard drive. So I copied this file over to this directory, and I renamed it to Golden Image. Okay, so that way, the VM itself that was here, that I got my original source from, can be turned back on. You can get back to work, join it back to the domain, etc. Or just, leave it turned off and use it the next time you need to update your image. So now I've got my gold image. On this particular host server, I don't have enough disk space to convert this. So then I copied it off to my laptop here where I had some more room. So I copied that vhdx file here, and it was 9.8 gigabytes. And then in my Hyper-V, so you don't even have to have the same box to do this, I went here to Edit Disk, and then I found the disk that I just uploaded, my golden image, and then I selected that here, and then walk through the same process. Do the convert, set it to .vhd, make it a fixed size, and then it needs an output. And then I selected the output here and then built this new image. Okay, so I'm not going to walk through that again. That took about a half hour to convert, and you obviously don't want to watch the paint dry. This image is now 127 gigabytes. We need to get this uploaded to Azure, and I like Storage Explorer. You can do it with AZ Copy. You can do it with just copy it over HTTP, do it through Azure File Share. A lot of ways you can get the data up to the cloud, but in Storage Explorer, this tool has a lot of automatic failure retries and things like that, so we're going to use this. So I'm going to create here under my storage account, and I'll just pick one that already exists. Let's create for ourselves a new container. And then in the images container, we're going to hit upload a file, and we'll select our particular file. And that'll be our goldimage.vhd. And then now it wants us to choose the type of blob that we will upload. A blob, again, is a block level object, and a block blob would be something like an image file, or maybe even an executable or a video file. The idea is that it is not something that's going to be open and constantly written to. It's not a super large file. Those kind of things are page blobs, and that is what it's telling you here. Upload.vhd and vhdx as page blobs recommended. We need it to be a page blob in order to be able to use it. So now I'm going to hit upload, and then it's going to now queue the upload and then process it and send the upload to Azure. Now looking back at the Azure portal, we go under our storage accounts to that same storage account, and we go to our blobs, and there's our new images container, and you can see the file is here and uploading. Now it is not done yet, but you will see it here right away. And you can watch the progress here and monitor that as you go. And depending on your bandwidth, are you on a VPN? Are you pushing this over the internet? Are you on an express route? This will all go at different speeds, of course, and different latencies and bandwidth will all come into account. Okay, so it looks like our upload has finished successfully. And if we go back to the Azure portal, now we've got a VHD file uploaded to Azure. So this is our custom image that has been prepped and prepared and Sysprepped and all of that. So now we're ready to make this into a image. So in the top search bar here, you can type in the word images and then go to images in Azure. You could also find this under the all services menu. Now we want to create an image. So an image, like any other resource in Azure, needs a name. So let's say golden image. And we have to store it in a subscription. So I'll store this in migration 1, and that's in the West US region, and then I'll browse. And if you've been paying attention, you would see this is not going to work. So going back for a second, actually let me duplicate this tab. And going back to our storage account, see that the storage account that we uploaded to was MSDean, and we can see that here in the Storage Explorer as well. MSDean lives in the East US 2 region. So today there is a feature in Azure, and that is the Shared Images Gallery. Shared Images Gallery is the idea that we've come up with as a way to offset the fact that Azure is region specific. So just like we just saw when trying to browse to a storage account, doesn't exist in West US 2 because I don't have any storage accounts in West US 2. They're just in East and East 2. So I can't get to the image that I created in West US 2. So what I need to do instead is choose a resource group that is in the same region as the storage. So I go to East US 2, I click Browse, and now I see storage accounts. So I can click on here, click on my image, and click on my golden image and hit select. And then you can finish your features here, either if you want this image to be zone redundant or not, and then what kind of hard drive in Azure or SSD you want this to be. So I'm going to make this a standard SSD, and all OS disks should be read-write cache enabled, and then we will hit create. Now getting back to the shared images gallery. So because region-specific storage accounts exist today, and that's a good thing. That allows us to do things like we did in our last video about failover of storage accounts. We needed to come up with some way to be able to take the image that we just worked on and uploaded and not have to maintain 50 copies of it. And that would be a copy for each region, and that maybe if you're only in 2 regions, you need 2 copies. So if you have 10 images that you have to maintain them across 2 regions. Now that's 20 images. That's a lot of, quote, wasted space. The shared images gallery is a way to offset that need. And we do that by storing the image once, and we can have versions and iterations on that image, but we store the image once, and then we share that image across other regions. Now, this feature is still currently in preview, so I'm not going to get too much more into this today, but if you are interested in seeing a video on this, even though there's no graphical interface, it's all command line driven at this point, give me a comment in the description below, and if people are interested in that, we'll create a video for that. So moving back to our image creation process, so if we hit refresh here, now we've got a golden image. So awesome. Now we've got this image and it's referenced built on that original VHD file. There's the kind of disk it'll produce, and it's write and read caching enabled. And we also get a resource ID. Now this is very important for building VMs based on this image. So think about the marketplace. So inside the Azure Marketplace, when you're going to build something, and we go here to the image reference, and we're referencing a publisher, offer, SKU, and version. We didn't have to do this. What we could have done if we wanted a custom image is we would say ID, since this is managed disk. And then this ID that we put here would be this resource ID pointing at our golden image. Okay, so that's how you can update your templates from going to a Microsoft Marketplace image to a custom image that you have in the portal. Okay, so now that we have this, let's build a VM, right? And we'll build this in the same region where the storage is located, because that's where the image is. So we're not talking about shared gallery at this point. And we'll give it a username and a password. We'll select a VM size, and then whether or not we use the Azure Hybrid Use Benefit, which I do. And then you can change your disk configuration if you need to, and then add whatever other networking features are required. I'm going to put this in our Azure Academy VNet, even though that's in a different resource group. That is perfectly fine. And I don't need an NSG because I've already got one. And I'll turn on the auto shutdown feature, and then tags referencing that this came from our golden image. There's another use for tags. Okay, our validation is passed, and we will create that VM. Now, while that is creating, I'm going to show you another way to do this. So let's do this from a Linux server. I've got running SUSE, and this is I think SUSE 12 SP3. I've already set up this box. It's already prepared. I've already done everything. Now I just hit capture, and we give this a name, and we store it someplace. And then now we have the option here to automatically delete this virtual machine after creating the image. Now this is recommended because once you have done this, you've sysprep the system, there's no way to turn it back on, there's no way to get it back. Okay, so in that kind of case, so we recommend that you turn it off, and then if you need to bring this system back, just deploy the image. And then you can choose to make it zone resilient or not, which I will in this case. And then we hit create. Okay, that process has completed, and so our SUSE VM that we had is now gone. So let's go back to the images, and we can see there she is. Now that we've got this image, let's deploy a new VM. Now notice what's missing here. There is no source blob URI because this image came from a VM that already existed in Azure. I didn't have to upload anything. I didn't have to change anything. All I did was click capture and give it a name and tell it where to be. That's all I did. So let's spin up a new VM from this, and we'll build that in the same region. And as you can see here, we've got our SUSE image selected, and there are the other marketplace image. Notice that the Windows image is not present. That's because this image is marked for Linux, so you won't see Windows and vice versa. And so your Linux experience is here, so password or SSH, and then if you need any inbound ports, which I do not. And then you can set your disk configuration, put it into the proper virtual network, and we'll give it the same tag here, and it's valid, and we're creating. Okay, so just a quick overview of how to do custom image deployment inside Azure, and then go through the process, build your custom image either on-prem or in the cloud through an image management process. And then in the end, if you have any questions about whether or not this image lives up to the same standards that your original thick image process did on premise, then go ahead and run your same scan tools against it. If you followed the same process, you will end up with the same result. And this way saves you time and money by doing it in a much more DevOps focused way. So I hope you enjoyed this second video in our series looking at how to migrate your data into Azure. Don't forget to comment on the video, like the video, subscribe. We drop a new video roughly about once a week. And let me know what you're interested in as this series develops. Happy learning!